Welcome back to Visual Design for Multimedia. Today we're going to continue with After Effects, and I'm going to start off this lesson by teaching you how to animate a bit more with type, with text inside of After Effects. So we'll start off by creating a new composition. I'm just going to create a new project here, and we'll create a new comp inside of there. I'm going to go with the standard HD, so I'm going to come down here and choose HD TV 1080p, I believe that. Yep, 1920 by 1080. I'm going to change this so it's only about a minute long. Sorry, it always takes your last settings, so I had kind of a long piece in here last time I opened up After Effects. There we go. And 24 frames per second sounds good for animation, and we're good to go. So I'm going to zoom in on my window a little bit. Remember, you can always come here and click on Fit, and it'll blow it up to the size that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the Type tool. I'm going to put in here, here is the title. And I'm going to blow this up in scale. Let's bring this up to actually let's take this to 150. There we go. That'll do it. And then I'm going to move it down to the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and just save this to my desktop. All right, cool. So here is the title. So what I want to show you is if you write any text inside of After Effects, any type, any kind of title work, any kind of motion graphics that you're trying to work with that involve text, if you unfold your text layer, obviously we've already gone over all the standard kind of transformation options with opacity, rotation, scale, position. But type has one of these neat things here. If I unfold the area that says text, you'll notice right over here to the right is this button or this bit of text that says animate. If I click on that, I get this drop-down menu, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just start with position. So we're going to animate the text's individual position parameter. The minute I did that, you'll see this thing called the Animator came in. And the Animator is sort of this really powerful system inside of After Effects that has a whole bunch of ways to control type and other elements. So right off the bat, you'll see that the position was added. It's a parameter was added to the Animator kind of listing there. And so if I go ahead and grab my position here and I unfold right above it, you'll see there's range selector right here. So I unfolded that. And the range has kind of a start, an end, and an offset, right? So right now it starts off with the start at 0%, and then we can go up to 100%. So what we're going to do is right off the bat, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And we're going to make this happen over 1 second. And I'm going to bring down my preview range here, just so that when we go to preview this, we're only showing a little bit of it. Okay, so there's my 1 second. I'll go ahead and set a keyframe. I'm going to go to 0. I'm going to set that keyframe at 0%, right? And one of the things next we're going to do is go to about the 1 second mark, and then I'm going to change this to 100%. Now you're not going to see anything if I scrub back and forth. Nothing's happening here. You can see that there's a little cursor icon that is moving between each letter, and that's what you're going to see. What this does is it allows me to kind of animate the position of each letter as they go forward. Now that I have these keyframes set that go from 0 to 100% on the range start point, now I can start to play around with the amount that I want those to change position. And I can go with, I can increase any of these amounts. And you're going to see they move just a little bit. So I just increased those by 16 pixels. And you'll see that move just a little bit, right? So let's go ahead and up that. Let's say 100 pixels. And now when I go back, you see they've jumped even more, right? So I'm going to go back to the beginning here, and let's just go ahead and keep increasing that. I could take it so that it goes all the way off screen if I want to, depending on the size of your screen. So now they're going to animate in one letter at a time coming across the X range, right? And if I go ahead and just preview that, it's going to be really fast, but it's going to be nice. It'll come across. I'm actually going to reduce that preview range just so we can bring that in a little bit tighter. And maybe I don't want to go that far with it. I'm going to bring that in. That's 1600 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back down a little bit. Let's see how that looks. So you can see they come in nice and kind of one letter at a time across the horizontal. Now I could change that. I could take that back to 0, and I could make it happen vertically as well. So you can see it almost gives it this stair step kind of vibe to it. So I come across, it's going to start down below and then slide into place. And that's kind of a fun one to do with a mask. You know, I could actually set a mask on this. So as they come up, if I have my layer selected and I go ahead and come up here and grab the rectangle shape tool, I can go ahead and draw a mask in. You'll see it's yellow, designating it's a mask. And you'll see a mask has now been added on. And I'll even add a little feather to that mask. I'll give it around 50 pixel feather. And now as they come in, you see they kind of like fade off into that feather zone. There we go. Not too bad, right? Now they're kind of rigid right now. One thing I could do is grab both of these pixels and right click on them and do Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease, and that'll just kind of help smooth out the animation a little bit. So I'm going to save. They just kind of slide into place. They have a little bit more of a smoothness to them. And if I want to add something else to that, I'll go ahead and let me go ahead and yeah, that mask color is fine. I'm going to go ahead and put a little rotation on them as well. So, you know, I did have it so that we have moving in the vertical now 50, I'm sorry, I have it up here, moving in the position about 240. Let's do like 240 exactly. I'm going to add a rotation to it. And the way I can do that is if I select the Animator parameter, I don't want to come up to here where it says Animator, but do you see how there's a little Add tab here? I'm kind of circling it with my cursor. If I click on that, I can add a rotation property as well. And now you see that gets added to the animator. If I came up here and did it, there'd be like a second animator, and we don't want that. We want to be able to control it all with under one set of keyframes, right? So now I could also come in here and add a little rotation to these so that they kind of rotate as they're coming up. So now as I go back here and I preview it again, now they're rotating and snapping into place, which is kind of fun, right? And the mask helps because they just kind of come out of nowhere. They kind of fade up behind this masked curtain with a nice little fade as we go in between each one. Now that's happening really quickly, so maybe I take this out to 2 seconds. And we'll go ahead and bring that in. Very nice. And now there's a few other things under here that I like to that I want to kind of call attention to. We've done position. We can also do scale. So if I want to add another parameter here, I'll go to Add, Property, and Scale. I mean, there's all sorts of different things you can do, right? So as we come down here again, I'll have them maybe blow up a little bit. They're locked right now, vertical and horizontal. So I'll have them kind of like come in rather large and rotate into position. There they go. It's kind of a nice effect. It's like they're folding in from depth as well. So it's just a really cool way to kind of control these things one letter at a time, right? And there's so much that you can do with it. This is just a starting point for it. You can do a lot. And if you go under the advanced, under the more options here, you'll see that there's also some different controls that we can play around with a little bit. So or actually, I'm sorry, I didn't want to go under that. I wanted to go under advanced, my bad. So under advanced here, you'll notice like shape, there's a couple of these different shape options. Square brings them in like really kind of like snapping them up one at a time. Ramp up and wrap down kind of brings them in a little bit more of a cascade to it, where they kind of like rotate in a little bit more, which is kind of nice. And you can see it maybe doesn't quite work with this. We have to play with it a little bit more on the distance. Like right there, they're not moving far enough away for the ramp in to work. So I'd have to change that vertical setting a little bit. So if I would go back, fold up advanced, and then maybe on my position, go a bit further away. Actually, I'm not sure. Because it's ramping in, actually, let me undo that and actually change that. If I go back to advanced, instead of ramp up, let's try ramp down. So each one's going to give you kind of a different effect. That one's ramping down. It gives you kind of an opposite of it. That's actually not what I'm looking for. Let's just try smooth. Let's try that. So that brings you in with an interesting kind of scaling as well. You get kind of a curvature to it there. So you can play around with them and see which one works best for you. I'm going to go ahead and take it back to square. I think the scale kind of threw that off for doing those. And there's a lot more settings here we'll go over in the future, but this should get you started as far as just beginning to play around a little bit with some of the type animation tools that are available inside of After Effects. There's also a randomized order. I actually haven't done that one before. Let's take that on and see what happens. Oh, that's kind of fun. So that brings them in a little random sequence. And you can set the seed on it as well, so they don't have to go in order every time, which is kind of fun. All right, we'll take that off. And there is a smoothness here. If you want to turn that on, ease in, high, you can control them a little bit more. So I could maybe smooth it out just a little bit more. And you can also play around with, instead of percentage, which takes which basically also, I'm sorry, instead of just characters, when it's like calculating the timing on it, also plays with the spaces, right? So you probably noticed as it was coming in, it was like HERE, pause, IS, pause, THE, pause, TITLE, pause. You can change it, so instead of just, you can do characters without spaces, and then do that, and it'll come in a lot smoother without those little gaps. So no pauses now. So another just kind of setting to pay attention to as well. I think that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and stop that. And what I want to do is show you a couple of export options. So I have 2 seconds of footage here. This is going to export really quick. I can go to export in Adobe Media Encoder. So we'll bring this up. This is going to take a little bit to work with. Before we get there, I want to show you one other thing that you can do. So, you know, I just brought in a mask from using the shape tool here. But if I delete that mask, we're going to hide that for a second for Media Encoder. We'll come back to it. If I delete that mask, and you can see there's all the letters down below, right? So we still need a mask to make this work. Otherwise, we're going to have to, you know, take those off frame. So let's bring in another mask. I wanted to show you, I didn't get to in my last lesson, my Photoshop masking. You can make any shape that you want in Illustrator and bring it in as a mask as well, which is really cool, right? So I could come in here and make a total like zigzag mask if I wanted to, and have all the control that I can do inside of Illustrator. Let's close that off. And I can literally copy it, hide Illustrator, choose my layer here, and paste it. I just did Command V, and it comes in as a mask, which is pretty awesome, you know, that you can bring that in and then have all of that happening inside of my mask. Now, obviously it needs kind of positioned a little bit better. So let's bring this up maybe there. And I don't think that's quite what I was looking for, but let's go ahead and scale this out a little bit. That could work. I'll kind of make this just a little bit bigger, so when it does actually come in, we can see the text. And now as that comes in, it has kind of a jagged shape to it as well. Well, it looks like it needs a little bit more. There we go. And if I want to, I can unfold the mask. I can still add a feather to the whole thing, so it has some like softness as it's coming in, right? That's maybe a little too much feather. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. I think that'll still load in. Yeah, close enough. It's a little off on the E, but it'll still work. So anyway, you can bring in any shape that you want, and it'll work, you know, and you don't have to do it that way as well. You could always take this Illustrator file and save it to my desktop, do like a vector shape, and hide that, and then I could go to File and import it. There it is, vector shape. I'm just going to bring it in as footage. There it is, nice vector shape. So, you know, I could delete my mask from here and bring it in this way as well if I wanted to. So if I delete it there, And then I can bring that in as a shape underneath, right? And, I didn't bring it in as a mask so much, but I could still bring that in however I want. And if I actually would bring it in above it, you can do some fun stuff where I showed you in the last one a different type of masking is that I can do what's called an alpha matte and then have my object still come in behind the alpha matte. But it also gives me the ability to animate that alpha matte because it's a separate layer and it has all these different controls and positions, and I can animate, individual points on that mask and do all sorts of fun stuff. So either way, whatever you want to do, you can bring in vector shapes from Illustrator and use them as masks if you find that easier to do than building them out yourself with the pen tool instead of After Effects or with the various shape layer tools. All right, so let's go back to Media Encoder. So here's Media Encoder. I wanted to show you two things because in this particular project, I'm giving you a couple of options. Obviously, I showed you in the last class, if I want to just do this as kind of 1080p video, I can come over here to my presets. And if I unfold web video and then go down to social media, you'll see there's the YouTube 1080p or the Vimeo 1080p. And I can drag that on. And then this is going to export this animation at 1080p, just like I set up with my composition size. If you go up here, you'll see this whole thing set up as 1080p, which is great, so it'll match. And if I bring up Media Encoder, I could go ahead and spit this out. I could save it to my desktop and call this animated text. And go ahead and start it up. Now, obviously, we got to wait for our dynamic link server from Adobe. Always makes you wait for it for a second. And I didn't do any customizations to that recipe. I could have changed it up a little bit. If I do that, I can move it now. And it should be here on my desktop. Let's see where it went. Got a lot of stuff on my desktop right now. Oh boy, where did that go? Might have been in here. Yep, there it is. Nice. Pretty simple, right? So there's my MP4 version. But some of you might want to do this as an animated GIF. So I wanted to show you that you could also do that in Media Encoder. So if I go to Media Encoder, I know it's already rendered, but if you right-click on it, you can reset its status and render again. And this time, instead of social media, under web, somewhere in here is the animated GIF. Sorry, I just had it out. I can't remember if it's other. I thought it was under web. Well, we can always search for it. There it is. It was under image sequence. So if I go there, if I unfold image sequence, you'll see here's the GIF option, right? So I can drag this onto here. And again, I can choose my desktop. This time I'll actually put it on the desktop. And I can spit it out that way as well. And now I have it as an animated GIF that could be shared on social media. I could drag it into a web browser. If I open up Google Chrome, you'll see I can load it in, and it plays just fine inside of a browser. It's a pretty simple GIF right now. Let's see what the size looks like. It's only 72K. It's still 1920 by 1080, still that standard HD. But I wanted to show you that it's just as easy to create an animated GIF as it is to create an MP4 with Media Encoder and After Effects, which is really powerful because you might want to create an explainer video, but you might also want to try creating like an animated infographic using an animated GIF. Well, you can do all of that with After Effects and Media Encoder. All right, I think I'll stop it there. Hopefully that gives you some new ways to explore type. I'll follow this up with some more intermediate and advanced lessons. This is just a very basic lesson of how to get started. There's a whole lot more, so many techniques for controlling type inside of After Effects. We're just scratching the surface. As always, thanks for tuning in, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. All right, have a good day.